One Piece Chapter 1032 is out. We are back from break, so let's dive in. Our cover story this week is Yamato delivering goods to an old lady up on a hill with a bunch of cats. Now, as soon as I saw this, it immediately gave me Luffy vibes because it felt like something he would do on the side, just, being nice to some old lady. But it also reminded me of Nami, and it kind of occurred to me that Yamato kind of reminds me of both Luffy and Nami in a sense, in a way of both design and character, because design, she obviously has some Nami-like qualities, but I can see like little elements of Luffy and Nami in her personality. We start the chapter with Marco and Izo heading towards the fire yokai. Izo mentions being uneasy about it, so that makes me think that Izo at least has a suspicion that it might be from Kanjuro. Now, if they're heading towards a fire yokai, they're either going to pass it and figure out who made it, or they're going to try and stop it. My guess is they're going to find out who made it first, meaning they're going to try and get to Kanjuro and Kinemon and Kiku, and at that point they can see the aftermath of all the fighting. Now, if they do go here, I can see them picking up Kinemon's upper half and having him do his fire cutting technique on the yokai. Not entirely sure how this would affect the fire, since for the most part it seems to be intangible, but I feel like fire being a fairly intangible thing already, that won't be bad for Kinemon. They also pass by Big Mom when they're heading to see the yokai, and it's very odd because Big Mom doesn't interact with them at all. There's no interaction between the two parties, but Big Mom is very clearly in the panel, and it almost looks like she's side-eyeing Marco and Izo. Now, one thing I think about is the fact that Mother Caramel made a big fire turn into basically Pandora. So if Big Mom has an opportunity, I'm wondering if she might put her soul into either the fire of the castle or try and take the soul of the yokai, if that could be a thing. We then move to the second basement where we still have Yamato, Drake, and Apu conversating as they move along. Apu is still trying to get Yamato on his side, Drake is telling him it's not going to work, and we still have Fuga chasing. The interaction between Yamato and Fuga is very interesting because initially it seemed like Fuga was pretty much enraged in attacking Yamato, but at this point Yamato says that it's been a while since she's talked to him, but she doesn't have time to catch up. Later on she even asks for a favor from Fuga and it seems like he complies, so there's definitely some kind of relationship between these two. One of the very popular theories going around right now is that the first three numbers are the samurai that emerged from the cave and helped Yamato a long time ago. And with each chapter, we seem to get more and more evidence of that because we're getting more interactions with these numbers specifically and Yamato. Now, if this is the case, it's entirely possible that Yamato doesn't know these are the old samurai, but just happened to become friends with them because Yamato moves around the island she's never left. It wouldn't be surprising if she made a relationship with some of the numbers. Now, as they're moving along, Brick and Robin actually come through this area, and in a way to get away from CP0, they end up jumping down, landing on Fuga's head, and then landing to the ground. You can even see Brook do like a 10-point stand, making sure he nailed it. CP0 ends up getting caught in the yokai, and they take some fire damage, but it doesn't hurt them. They're back up later. It just goes to show that there really isn't anything to do to avoid the fire yokai. Basically, it's a ghost made of somehow tangible and intangible fire, and it's getting really close to the armory. Yamato supposedly has a plan to stop this, and it involves Fuga, so we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there. I feel like we're gonna need Yamato's fruit in this case because we need something to counteract the fire, and I doubt just normal water would work. I would assume something about Yamato's glacial powers would have some kind of counter effect. Now, as CP0 gets up from being burnt, they actually get stopped by Apu and Drake. Now, Apu starts off talking about how he's going to expose CP0 for being here and doing deals with pirates, but they quickly dispatch of him because CP0. It looks like they used Shigen on him, finger pistol, but he ended up blocking with armament hockey. He still took damage as we can see him bleeding, but it looks like he blocked any fatal strikes. CP0 also mentions that they are aware of Drake's true allegiance and that it wouldn't be kept a secret from CP0. Now, the way they say this, I think is vague on purpose because I think this is to indicate that they know Drake is still in the Marines, but I don't know if this is to indicate that they know that Drake is in Sword. Now, it is entirely possible because I think Sword knows of CP0, so it wouldn't be odd for them to know the reverse, but it kind of eliminates the idea to have these secret factions because if some people know, that means we probably have a lot of other people to know. You know, we expect people like Akainu, we expect people like Aokiji to be in these different factions, but if they kind of have inside information on the other, this becomes less surprising and less of a plot point. Apu ends up getting a sneak attack off, and at this point, Drake really doesn't have a choice but to align with Apu in order to fight CP0. Otherwise, they're going to take them both out. Now, we got the whole mention that CP0, especially the mass members, were the elite, so I kind of expect them to be above Drake and Apu in power. Obviously, we'll see how this fight goes. I think something will interrupt it before it gets too intense, but I would see CP0 coming out on top here, especially with Apu and Drake already injured. Most of the last bits of the chapter deal with the fight between King and Zoro, which we haven't seen in a little bit. Now, today on the Discovery Channel, we learned that pterodons can actually pull their face back and shoot it forward as a means to attack their prey. Now, I'm fully convinced Oda just has absolute fun with all of these Zoan dinosaur designs because he just makes some of the wildest things up. Now, to be honest, I still don't understand this attack myself, but it seems like King pulled his beak and face back and basically launched forward some kind of air attack, because Zoro mentions he couldn't block it. It kind of came out like a beam. So that would mean to some degree it's probably not tangible. It might be like an air blast, it might be some kind of wave of energy that's being shot and not exactly King's face. Zoro is obviously at a disadvantage here because we have a flying enemy, and while we saw that Zoro has some mobility in the sky, he really doesn't have the means to have an entire fight in the sky, so he's got to bring King down somehow. He gets King caught in a dragon twister, but all King needs to do for that is block with his wings. And this kind of leads to a moment where Zoro begins to deeply analyze King's abilities. He's breaking down his opponent mid-battle so he can see how he's supposed to defeat him. He makes a point to say that dinosaurs are basically dragons with their tough hides, and King agrees with that. Now, I think that's fitting because Oda does mark these fruits as dragon model fruits instead of dinosaur model fruits. So I think that's where that comes into play, and it also comes into play because we know that Zoro, who is an XP of Ryuma, is going to be cutting through dragons. This means Zoro has to do what he did back in Punk Hazard to be able to cut through the dragon's hive. Now King switches back to his base form, and he actually comes at Zoro with his sword, saying he craves a good battle, which is interesting because I figured King wanted to kind of just get this over with, but it seems like now he's into the sport. And in doing so, this gives Zoro time to make more analysis. He sees that King has wings, but he doesn't use them for function. They aren't similar to his pterodon wings at all. He also notices that the fire is still burning, and he makes observations that these are not part of King's devil fruit. These are part of King. And he comes to the conclusion that he has to realize what King's race is before he can defeat him. And that just means we're obviously going to figure out what King is before this fight's over, and we're going to figure out through some kind of exposition. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Zoro learning about King's race is going to do, unless Zoro already knows what that race is. Him just knowing what King is if he's a Lunarian, I don't know how that gives him an advantage to beat King. During the exposition drop, we would have to get some key elements that might indicate a weakness in King's race. Now, Zoro ends up taking an attack that puts him on his back for a little bit, and in this time he starts hearing a shamisen being played. And with that shamisen being played, it looks like Enma goes haywire. It starts draining his haki again through his arm like it did when he first held it. Now we eventually see that the shamisen is being played by Hiyori or Komurasaki, who's been playing the shamisen in the beginnings and ends of the X. Now there appears to be some kind of connection between the shamisen playing and Enma, and my first thought was that maybe there's some kind of connection between Hiyori and Enma, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's more of what's being played that's resonating with Enma. And maybe it's an idea of both what's being played and who's playing it, but I think it's mostly what's being played that's resonating. And I wonder if this is all somewhat of a red herring, because the chapter is titled after Odin's beloved sword. Now we know Odin had two swords. He had Enma and he had Ame no Habakiri. What I think might be possible is that Hiyori has Ame no Habakiri here right now, and that's what's resonating with Enma. Now my theory has been that Ame no Habakiri is going to be used to cut off the last head of Orochi. If my count is correct, we've seen 7 of his heads get cut off, and basically he's got this last one left. Ame no Habakiri is the sword that is said to have slayed Orochi, so this being the sword to use to cut off his last head makes a lot of sense. For the most part, I've been assuming that Momo is going to do it, but I don't see why Hiyori wouldn't be able to do this as well, especially because it seems like she's luring Orochi in, and trying to keep him there instead of running away. Also within the dialogue of Orochi and Hiyori, there's a lot of talk of passing to the other side, dying, spending the rest of their lives together. It sounds like this is a fitting endpoint for either Orochi or Orochi and Hiyori, but I'm going to guess it's just going to be Orochi at this point, and Hiyori might continue, because I think she's going to end up delivering the sword to either Zoro or Momo. Either way, she's obviously playing something up here to get Orochi pretty much to lower his guard, and once he does, it's going to be over for him. Now, it depends on how you view Orochi's death. A lot of people say that they wanted Momo to do it, they wanted Zoro to do it for it to have the most meaning. I think that Hiyori does have some kind of play in this fight. Now, I wouldn't say she's been as prominent as Momo or Zoro as far as enemies of Orochi, but I think she still fits. So I would still see it as fitting if she used Ame no Habakiri to take off Orochi's last head. That will do it for me. I thought this was a pretty good chapter, mostly set up for some things we're going to be seeing down the road here, and especially with CP0, with Orochi, with Zoro and his fight. I think we're just getting everything lined up to see the outcomes here soon, and we might see that probably before the end of the year. We're probably going to get at least one big reveal, at least one realization before the year ends. We might get more than that, but I'm expecting at least one. It's probably going to be between Zoro and King. Let me know what you guys thought down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. There'll be a poll in the description. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye. You know they say that kings aren't born with me, and maybe I'd agree if I weren't born this way. I know that sometimes